Understanding history often involves delving into some of the darker, more unsettling aspects of human behavior and societal evolution. While educational curriculums tend to focus on positive and inspiring stories, there are numerous grim and unsettling events that are often left out. Here, we explore 10 such scary facts from history that are seldom taught in schools but provide a deeper understanding of the human experience. 1. The Dancing Plague of 1518. The Dancing Plague of 1518 was a bizarre and terrifying event that took place in Strasbourg, a town in what is now France. In July of that year, residents began to dance uncontrollably and without reason. This peculiar and disturbing phenomenon lasted for about a month, leading to severe physical exhaustion, injuries, and even death for some participants. Historical records suggest that around 400 people were affected. The cause remains a mystery, with theories ranging from mass hysteria and ergot poisoning, a hallucinogenic mold, to supernatural explanations. Regardless of its origin, the event highlights the potential for mass psychological phenomena to have devastating real-world effects. 2. The Nanking Massacre. The Nanking Massacre, also known as the Rape of Nanking, occurred during the Second Sino-Japanese War. In December 1937, the Japanese Imperial Army captured Nanking, then the capital of China, and committed atrocities on an unimaginable scale. Over a period of 6 weeks, Japanese soldiers engaged in widespread murder, rape, and looting. Estimates of the death toll vary, with some sources suggesting that up to 300,000 people were killed. The brutality was staggering, with reports of entire families being murdered, women of all ages being sexually assaulted, and captives being subjected to horrific torture. This dark chapter in history is often glossed over in educational settings, yet it serves as a sobering reminder of the depths of human cruelty. 3. The experimentation of Unit 731. Unit 731 was a covert biological and chemical warfare research and development unit of the Japanese Army during World War II. Located in Harbin, China, this unit conducted some of the most grotesque human experiments in history. Prisoners, including men, women, and children, were subjected to vivisection, biological warfare tests, and exposure to extreme conditions without anesthesia. These experiments led to countless deaths and unimaginable suffering. The atrocities committed by Unit 731 remained largely unknown to the world until years after the war, and many of those responsible were never held accountable, highlighting a grim chapter of human experimentation and wartime ethics. 4. The Holodomor. The Holodomor was a man-made famine in Soviet Ukraine from 1932 to 1933 that killed millions of Ukrainians. The term Holodomor means death by hunger in Ukrainian. This catastrophic event was a direct result of the policies of the Soviet government under Joseph Stalin. Grain requisition quotas were set excessively high, and any resistance from peasants was met with brutal force. As a result, food supplies dwindled, and people were left to starve. The exact number of deaths is still debated, but estimates range from 3 to 7 million. The Holodomor is not only a tragic example of the devastating impact of political decisions on human life but also a powerful reminder of the dangers of totalitarian regimes. 5. The Tuskegee Syphilis Study. The Tuskegee Syphilis Study is one of the most infamous instances of unethical medical research in American history. Conducted by the United States Public Health Service between 1932 and 1972, the study involved 600 African American men, 399 of whom had syphilis and 201 who did not. The men were misled and not informed of the diagnosis, nor were they given proper treatment even after penicillin became widely available as an effective cure in the 1940s. Instead, they were monitored to observe the progression of the disease. This gross violation of medical ethics resulted in needless suffering and death, as well as the spread of the disease to the men's partners and children. The Tuskegee study is a stark example of racial discrimination in medical research and the importance of informed consent. 6. The Khmer Rouge regime. The Khmer Rouge, led by Pol Pot, ruled Cambodia from 1975 to 1979 and carried out one of the most brutal genocides in history. The regime aimed to create a classless agrarian society, which led to the forced relocation of city residents to the countryside, where they were subjected to hard labor, starvation, and execution. Intellectuals, professionals, and anyone perceived as a threat were targeted. An estimated 1.7 to 2 million people, nearly a quarter of Cambodia's population, died due to execution, forced labor, and famine. The killing fields, where mass executions took place, and the S-21 prison, where prisoners were tortured before being killed, are grim reminders of this horrific period. 7. The Jonestown Massacre. The Jonestown Massacre occurred in 1978 in the remote jungle of Guyana, where the People's Temple, a cult led by Jim Jones, established a settlement. Under Jones' authoritarian rule, the community practiced communal living and was subjected to intense psychological manipulation. On November 18, 1978, Jones orchestrated a mass murder-suicide in which more than 900 members of the cult, including children, died by ingesting cyanide-laced punch. Those who resisted were shot. The Jonestown Massacre remains one of the largest losses of American civilian lives in a non-natural disaster and serves as a chilling example of the destructive power of cults and the vulnerability of individuals to charismatic and manipulative leaders. 8. The Great Chinese Famine. The Great Chinese Famine, which occurred between 1959 and 1961, was one of the deadliest famines in history. It was largely a result of the policies of the Chinese Communist Party under Mao Zedong, particularly the Great Leap Forward. This campaign aimed to rapidly transform China from an agrarian society into a socialist society through rapid industrialization and collectivization. Mismanagement, false reporting of grain production, and poor agricultural practices led to a severe decline in food production. Additionally, government requisitioning of grain left the rural population with little to eat. Estimates of the death toll range from 15 to 45 million people. The famine had devastating effects on Chinese society and remains a sensitive and controversial topic in China today. 9. The Chernobyl Disaster. The Chernobyl disaster, which occurred on April 26, 1986, in the Soviet Union, is considered the worst nuclear power plant accident in history. A reactor at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in Ukraine exploded, releasing a significant amount of radioactive particles into the atmosphere. The immediate explosion killed 2 plant workers, but the subsequent release of radiation led to the deaths of many more due to acute radiation syndrome, cancer, and other radiation-induced diseases. The disaster resulted in the evacuation and resettlement of hundreds of thousands of people. The long-term health effects and environmental impact are still being felt today. The Chernobyl disaster is a stark reminder of the potential dangers of nuclear energy and the importance of rigorous safety protocols. 10. The bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945 remain some of the most controversial and devastating events in history. The United States dropped 2 atomic bombs on these Japanese cities, resulting in immediate and horrific destruction. Hiroshima was bombed on August 6, followed by Nagasaki on August 9. The blasts killed an estimated 200,000 people, most of whom were civilians, through the initial explosions, burns, radiation sickness, and subsequent injuries. The bombings led to Japan's surrender and the end of World War II, but left a legacy of suffering, genetic damage, and moral debate about the use of nuclear weapons. The long-term health effects included increased cancer rates and genetic mutations among survivors and their descendants. These events are a somber reminder of the devastating power of nuclear weapons and the profound ethical questions surrounding their use. These 10 disturbing historical events, often omitted or glossed over in standard educational curriculums, provide critical insights into the darker aspects of human nature and societal behavior. Understanding these events helps us appreciate the complexities of history and the importance of striving for a more humane and just world.